The Horses of Cheif Whitestone. One beautiful spring morning, Silly Woolly just couldn't think of anything to do. So his mother suggested he take a long walk in the woods near their house. This was the time of the year when all sorts of exciting things were happening. Trees were beginning to grow new leaves. Flowers and plants were pushing up through the pine needles on the ground. All kinds of birds were chattering away as they searched for new things to eat and for building materials for new nests. "Okay, Mom," said Silly Woolly. "It doesn't sound very exciting to me, but it's better than hanging around here. Maybe I can find a frog or a turtle or something." So off he went, taking the old familiar horse trail into the pine woods. After he had been walking for a few minutes, he noticed a small path leading away from the main trail, one he had never noticed before. "I wonder where that goes," he thought. And suddenly interested, he turned and started cautiously to push his way carefully through the branches that grew out over it. Up ahead, he saw a sharp turn, and when he got there, he was surprised to see the path leading to a small meadow that he had never seen before. He stood still for a minute, just looking around at this new sort of secret spot he had found. "Gosh," he thought, "I bet no one has ever been here before." But no sooner had he thought this than a crackly old voice right behind him said, "That's not true, son. Red Man been here many, many moons." Silly Woolly jumped at least 2 feet off the ground, he was so scared. But then, his curiosity being stronger than his fear, he turned around to see a bent old Indian man squatting on the ground in front of a small tepee made of deerskins. All he wore was a breechcloth of the same material. His long silver hair was worn in a long ponytail, tied with a piece of morning glory vine. He had the wrinkliest face and arms Silly Woolly had ever seen. His toothless grin was now spread across his face as he gazed back with his black, piercing eyes. Who are you?" stammered Silly Woolly. And where did you come from?" The Indian didn't speak at once. He just slowly moved his arms in a circle up to and over his head, indicating he had always lived there. Then he spoke very softly. "Me, Cheif Whitestone's son, called Bright Pebble. Me last of tribe, only one left to tell story of great white stallions." "Gosh!" exclaimed Silly Woolly. "Would you tell it to me, please?" "Bright Pebble tell small paleface next sunrise, when air cold and misty. Maybe we then see horses of Cheif Whitestone." "Oh, boy, that's great. I'll be sure to be here before sunrise." "That good," grunted the Indian. "But now you go. Bright Pebble must speak to Great Spirit. Must ask for one more running of great white stallions." On hearing this, Silly Woolly turned and started to look along the little path waving goodbye to Bright Pebble, who had already risen to his knees, was raising his arms high in front of him, and was mumbling Indian words to the Great Spirit. On his way back home, Silly Willy decided not to tell anyone about his secret meadow and his encounter with Bright Pebble. It all sounded sort of crazy now, and he didn't want his mother and dad to stop him from returning early next morning. So when he got home and his mother greeted him with, "Oh, there you are! Goodness, it's so late I began to worry about you. Did you have a good walk?" "Yeah, Mom, I sure did, but right now I'm real hungry and tired. I'll tell you about it tomorrow." Well, it was awfully hard for him to hide his excitement, but he managed somehow, and finally got off to bed without his parents suspecting how very anxious he was for morning to come. He carefully set his alarm clock for 6 o'clock, so he would have plenty of time to get out to the secret meadow before sunrise. He then laid out his clothes on the chair by his bed, so he could quietly get up and out of the house in the morning without his father and dad hearing him. When he lay down in bed, all he could think about was the wrinkled old Indian, and he wondered just what kind of a story he was going to hear. And how could he possibly get to sleep? But soon his eyes closed, and he did sleep soundly until BLAP! His alarm clock went off, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. Silly Willy jumped out of bed, slipped on his shirt, pulled on his pants, and got his shoes on and tied faster than he had ever dressed before. He was still struggling into his jacket as he quietly slipped out the back door and ran out past the barn and out to the pine woods horse trail. He spotted the small path right away, and before long he stood panting in front of the teepee, wondering what would happen next. Well, he didn't have long to wait, for soon the skin flap of the teepee was pulled aside, and out stepped the most amazing figure Silly Willy had ever seen. Bright Pebble was dressed in his great ceremonial costume, a long white robe of white deerskin, a large necklace of shiny black polished stones, and a wonderful headdress with brightly colored bird feathers of all kinds all around the top and on down a long tail that reached all the way to his bony knees. He grunted, "Ugh, ho, ho," which, as you know, means hello in Indian language. He squatted down in the same spot he had been sitting the day before, crossed his arms across his chest, motioned to Silly Willy to sit beside him. He took a big breath and started slowly to speak. In ancient times, many, many moons ago, my father, Whitestone, was chief of all tribes from Big River in north to Ocean in south, and from Big Mountain you see here to Ocean in east. Many squaws and braves all loved Chief Whitestone, who was peaceful and wise, and always brought tribes good hunting and plenty food. When my sister Shining Rock reached 16 moons, which meant 16 years old, a fine young brave from another tribe asked to marry her. He brought a beautiful, pure white stallion as gift to Chief Whitestone, who was greatly pleased and gave blessing to young couple, who then married, promising to bring him a grandson. But 12 moons later, that's 12 months, or 1 year in our time, my sister Shining Rock fell ill and soon left us and went to Happy Hunting Ground. On same day Shining Rock died, Chief Whitestone's pure white stallion also died and disappeared to Happy Hunting Ground. Now Chief Whitestone loved his horse and his daughter very much, and believed that if he had another such horse, his daughter would return to us. Shining Rock's husband hoped this was true, so he searched far and wide until finally he found another great white stallion, which he again gave to Chief Whitestone. But Shining Rock did not return, and 12 moons later this second white stallion also died. But Chief Whitestone would not give up. He asked Shining Rock's husband to again go out into the land and seek another horse. He was a good and loving brave, so he again found another big pure white stallion. But the same thing happened, and 12 moons later it too was dead. Oh, how sad our tribe was! 3 more times a new white stallion was found, but as before, all lived just 12 moons, then died, again going to Happy Hunting Ground to join the first 3 horses.
"Gosh, Mr. Bright Pebble," said Silly Willy, "is that the end of your story?"
"Be patient, pale-faced boy," said Bright Pebble. "There is more. By now, Chief Whitestone was an old, sick man. He hadn't much longer to live. One day, Chief Whitestone called his council of braves to his tepee. He told us of a dream he had, where the Great Spirit had spoken to him, saying that sometime, many, many moons from now, when the sun was rising and the air was misty and cold, there would be a young pale-face sitting with the last of his tribe, and the horses and his daughter Shining Rock would once again return to our land." Now the old Indian turned his head and smiled as he looked at Silly Willy, and then looked to the east across the meadow, where the sun was just beginning to show through the trees. As Silly Willy followed his gaze, he thought he heard something. A very faint drumming sound, way off in the distance, and then, as the sound grew steadily louder, he became so excited, he jumped to his feet and peered through the cold mist that covered the meadow. Old Bright Pebble merely grunted, "Ugh, now you see." And as the pounding noise grew louder and louder, the ground beneath them began to shake. Then finally, through the mist, galloping, galloping, galloping came the 6 white stallions of Cheif Whitestone. As they charged across the meadow, a small figure, dressed in pure white deerskin, could be seen riding the last horse. Her black hair was flying out behind her, and there was a happy smile on her beautiful face. Twice around the meadow they charged, their hooves pounding, pounding, pounding on the grassy ground, and then quickly they raced off and disappeared through the trees. It had all happened so suddenly, and it ended so soon. Silly Willy just stood there with his mouth wide open and his eyes popping out of his head. When he finally realized what had happened, he turned toward the old Indian. "But, gosh, he's gone," said Silly Willy. "And Bright Purple's teepee is gone, too." Now he could hardly believe all he had seen had really happened. Once again he looked around his secret meadow, noticing exactly where the horses had come from and where they had gone. But now everything seemed changed. The sun was now shining brightly, the mist had all burned off, and everything seemed quite normal again. Now Silly Willy realized he was tired and very hungry, so he started slowly towards the small path, when, "Hey, what's that?" he said, and as he spoke he bent down and picked up a small, very white stone in the shape of a horse. "It must be a special sign from the Great Spirit," he thought, and carefully put it in his pocket, where it would always remind him of this very special meadow and of the strange and exciting things that had happened to him that morning.